What does Nintendo, Sony, Roblox, Mojang, 2K, EA, Rockstar, all have in common? Other than being video game companies, they're currently being sued for one of the biggest video game lawsuits in history. And it's a personal injury lawsuit, which is why I have something to say about it. So I'm Dr. Mizan, MD. I am a medical legal consulting physician. Watch my other videos. I talk way too much about myself in those videos, so I'm not going to do it here. And I basically analyze and help out with cases that involve medical malpractice, personal injury. And my job is really just to teach people how not to get sued. And if you are being sued, what do you do then? And also, if people are enacting an injustice, then I try to help people achieve justice. So that's who I am. Okay, let's start, because this lawsuit is very near and dear to my heart because I am a huge gamer. So, and I mean that in the legitimate way. I grew up with the Super Nintendo, a Game Boy. Was it a Game Boy Color? I'm pretty sure it was a purple transparent Game Boy Color. I grew up with Mario, The Legend of Zelda. I'm actually one of the biggest Legend of Zelda fans. I wrote my college thesis on the actual timeline and the theology of Zelda, which is insane. And then a few years later, Nintendo released the Hyrule Historia, which is kind of crazy. Anyway, grew up, I've been molded by video games. I currently have a PS5, a Switch, a Meta Quest 3 VR thing. My life would not be what it is and how it is on a daily basis without the beauty and the comfort and the peace given to me by video games. Okay, but these lawsuits are not looking at the comfort or the peace or the the community building of video games. What are these lawsuits looking at? These lawsuits are looking at the addictive qualities of video games. So first, I'm reading this article from Reuters. Both of these papers will be linked in the description below. So the first article is from Reuters. It's titled, "The First Video Game Addiction Lawsuit Got Knocked Out. Will Others Follow?" All right, so June 21, 2024. When my 20-something son was a teenager, there was a period when he played video games for hours on end, bristling when we told him to stop, which is why I can relate to allegations in a series of personal injury lawsuits filed across the country over the past 8 months against video game makers, claiming the companies intentionally designed products that have turned a generation of kids into gaming addicts. Still, and this is a hilarious statement because I'm in my 30s. Like, we've had video games since the 1970s, really. Like, you know, we had the Atari system. So there are boomers basically that grew up with video games. So this whole idea that only kids play video games or something, it's such a draconian, statement, which regardless, it's kind of funny. It's like books, video games today in 2024 are basically like books or movies. You can't really generalize it. There's adventure games, there's mystery games, there's romance games, not every game is Call of Duty and shooty bang bang, right? Okay. And again, what's funny about this current video game lawsuit is that, before, I'm sure we're all aware, video game companies have been sued for inciting violence and saying, oh, if you play games like Call of Duty or whatever, The Walking Dead or something, Left 4 Dead, it's going to make you more likely to commit bad stuff, right? Numerous, dozens upon dozens of medical studies, peer-reviewed medical studies have shown that is absolutely not the case. All right, so that's the only bit of scientific knowledge I'm gonna give. The first of more than a dozen similar video game addiction suits was voluntarily dismissed last week, though it's rather ignominious and didn't test the litigation central theories. Instead, it strikes me more as an unforced error by the plaintiffs, one seized on by defense counsel. Plaintiff person, I'm going to redact a lot of these names. The guardian of her 14-year-old grandchild identified, sued companies including Epic Games, Roblox, Microsoft, Google, Nintendo in federal court last fall, seeking unspecified compensatory and punitive damages. She alleged the defendants' intentional, negligent, deceptive, fraudulent, willful, immoral, reckless, and unlawful acts caused the injured party to become addicted to video games. Company spokespeople declined comment or did not respond to requests for comment. The plaintiff is represented by this group. All right. According to the complaint, the plaintiff, or rather the injured party at age 7, allegedly began playing video games at an increasing and uncontrollable pace, and now spends 35 hours a week playing Fortnite, Roblox, and Minecraft, becoming enraged if told to stop. As a result of this, quote, gaming addiction, the injured party allegedly requires treatment that includes medication therapy, outpatient counseling, and individualized education plan at school. So basically, before she used to play less, now she plays more. The false premise that the injured party continues to play Fortnite uncontrollably is the basis for all claims against Epic. So basically what they're saying is that the plaintiff's testimony is completely false. Like, their grandchild or whatever there is not actually addicted. Like, she's playing a lot and she has social issues. But they're basically, the plaintiff is pinning all of this on just a couple of video games that she plays. This case may be over, but litigation continues in multiple federal courts, including in Arkansas, Missouri, Florida, Georgia, Minnesota. Given the potential number of plaintiffs, 61% of the US population reports playing video games for at least 1 hour a week. The litigation in theory could be enormous. So what this journalist is trying to say here is that if many different personal injury lawyers sort of team up, this could be what's called an MDL, which is a multi-district litigation case, or it could even evolve into what's known as a mass tort. So a mass tort is where there's, who knows, hundreds of or thousands of injured parties going against the same defendant or defendants. And a mass tort is just really like a major lawsuit. Like, think of the asbestos lawsuit. So as a first line argument, defendants, including Microsoft and Nintendo, say the cases should be dismissed because the plaintiffs, as a condition of using their products, agreed to arbitrate any disputes, which is absolutely true. It's sad, but now they're, whenever we play any games, really, there's this whole terms of agreement, terms of service, like TOS and everything, right? Like, this wasn't a thing back when I was a kid, like in the 90s and stuff. You just, you bought a new cartridge, you push it in, you buy a CD, you push it in, you start playing, right? But now everything's like legal. And yeah, so the US Supreme Court in Brown versus Entertainment Merchants Association held in 2011 that video games are protected by the First Amendment and that their creation and dissemination cannot be suppressed solely to protect the young from ideas or images that some might consider unsuitable. Here, defense counsel argues the alleged problem is that video games are simply too engaging, but they say that's not grounds for liability any more than a page-turning novel or binge-worthy Netflix series. Plaintiffs' lawyers counter that the cases are about conduct, not content, product defects, not expression. And the author states, but to me the difference is hard to parse. All right, and then the author just says, going back to my real-life experience, however captivating or even addictive video games may be, surely parents or guardians still have the power to pull the plug. And again, a lot of the cases that I've discussed on this channel, one thing that is always the absolute common denominator in pretty much 99% of lawsuits in general, right, is that there's a lack of accountability, there's a lack of just user accountability. And that's something that, I have to sometimes be the bad guy and explain to someone, look, sure, drinking Mountain Dew has effects, but no one forced you to drink 2 gallons of it in a sitting, right? That was your own personal wish and desire and action to do so. So a lot of these cases are thrown out because they're what we call frivolous. So frivolous lawsuits are cases where, it's quite clear that there isn't a strong plaintiff argument. And again, like humility time, I totally understand. It's like raising children is hard. Yes, it's hard being a parent, especially in 2024, apparently. It's difficult for parents to set boundaries and rules and actually be a part of their children's lives. It's easier to just put a human baby and child in front of a screen and let that be their parent. And I'm 100% against this. But I get it. It's like when you're hurting for your child's future at whatever, it's easier to blame something or someone, right? Okay, the caveat, or rather the other part of this argument, right? Because just to remain balanced, and Mizan, right? The word Mizan in Arabic means balance. You know, my parents chose a great name. Anyway, well, it's our last name, but yeah. Grant, whoever chose our last name picked a good job. So, you know, I totally understand, because there are games, okay, like that like 100%, like they have gotcha mechanics. The word gotcha, G-A-C-H-A, is like a Japanese term. It basically means gambling. So it's like you're not sure what the next pull is going to be, and you have, you know, and now there's like pay to win and pay to play. So it's like, you know, people want more and more because it's addictive. It's like, you know, if I just put in 10 cents into this game, I might get this very rare character in this game or something, right? So that is legitimate, like, addiction. That's legitimate gambling. That, like, you know, a lot of video game companies have been under fire for, because you're literally instilling gambling in the people playing these games, which tend to be lower than 25 years old in terms of demographics. So, you know, like, you think Fortnite and, you know, what was that other one that was super popular? Like Genshin Impact had a huge gacha system, made multi-millions of dollars, like, off of this. You know, it's like, you might think like, oh, it's only 50 cents or something. Multiply that by millions of users, right? And then it does instill this sense that, oh, like, you know, why, like, you know, if you design a game where it's like you need to spend like 1 week grinding in order to fight a boss, or I could just pay $5 to, you know, fight the boss now and level up and get stronger, right? Like, you know, a lot of us adults, like, it targets us actually, because I'm actually guilty of doing that. Like, my wife and I, we were playing some Japanese RPG, and those are notorious for, like, grinding, right? So it was some Tales game, like, I don't know, I forgot which one it was, but basically it's like, dude, like, look, we're both working adults. Like, you know, I don't have the time to grind to, like, you know, level 30, and, you know, I'm willing to just pay $1.99 for these, like, experience crystals or whatever nonsense. So, and that's what I did. That was the only time I ever paid for something in a video game, once I already bought the video game, which is kind of crazy. Part 2 of video. So this is it's an article written about these lawsuits. So it takes a more plaintiff-friendly lens. So I want you guys to keep that in mind. All right. And I'll link this in the description. So video game addiction lawsuits. This was also a couple of days ago, June 9, 2024. Video game addiction has become a growing concern in recent years following the growth of sophisticated online gaming. Addiction to gaming has caused significant harm to individuals in various age groups and demographics, but particularly to adolescents. Individuals who have been harmed by video game addiction are now filing lawsuits against video game manufacturers. The lawsuits seek to hold the gaming companies liable for negligently failing to warn users about the potential for their games to be addictive. All right, so updates, June 10, 2024. No video game addiction class action lawsuit for now. What might have really jump-started this litigation would have been a video game additional MDL, multi-district litigation class action lawsuit. That is not going to happen, at least not yet. The plaintiffs in 5 lawsuits requested the cases be centralized in the Western District of Missouri. These lawsuits, which involve video game developers, digital app stores, and other tech companies, allege that these entities created and sold games with features designed to be psychologically addictive, particularly targeting minors and young adults. There are 15 such cases spread across 10 districts. The defendants oppose centralization and, if it proceeds, prefer this region. All right. After reviewing the filings and holding a hearing, the panel decided that centralizing these cases would not improve convenience or efficiency. So basically what they're saying is that, you know, there's no need to do a larger lawsuit here. And then they wrote, at some point that dam will break and there will be a video game addiction class action lawsuit, but that day is not today. All right. Addiction to video games. Video game addiction, also known as internet gaming disorder, significantly impairs an individual's control over gaming, often prioritizing it over essential life activities that negatively affect self-care, relationships, and productivity at school or work. This addiction disrupts cognitive functions like time perception and decision-making, and leads to social withdrawal, excessive anger, and lack of interest in other hobbies. The issue is worsening globally, particularly with the rise of online and cloud gaming, which provides easy access to games that often include in-game purchases, which, I was talking about, intensifying the addiction, particularly among minors and young adults. The widespread problem is largely driven by gaming companies intentionally designing games to be addictive to increase profits through in-game transactions or microtransactions. 2024, we all know what these are, right? These are horrible. I'm super duper opposed to these things. But again, I haven't downloaded a single game on my new phone, at all. And the reason why is because there aren't any good games anymore. Like, every single thing is just shoving ads in your face and saying, buy this, get the premium version, do this, and you'll get more lives, right? So lawsuits for video game addiction. Legal actions are being taken against these companies, which I'll read below, accusing them of employing deceptive practices that prioritize profit over user safety, especially targeting young individuals to secure a future consumer base. These practices have led to significant emotional and social issues for affected individuals, requiring extensive treatments and interventions. The video game addiction lawsuits seek to hold video game companies liable based on a failure to warn theory. The lawsuits assert that the video game companies had a duty to warn users that their games could potentially be addictive and habit-forming, and that this addiction could be harmful. And again, from the previous article, defense basically stated that, look, it's in the TOS, right? Like, you agreed to click accept before playing. Speaking of which, I just started the new Elden Ring DLC. Thank you to my wife. She's amazing, the best wife ever. She got it for me on day one. And yeah, even the DLC, there was when I started the game, there was I think 7 pages of TOS that I had to accept, especially for online play. So, it's there. How many of us actually read the TOS? Very few of us, but basically defense is saying, look, every single thing that you're alleging, we already warned the user, but it's up to the user to know what they're signing up for, right? Okay. And again, that I'm not an attorney, so I'm not going to opine on that, but the cases that the personal injury cases that I've had, also the defense argument for a lot of products, for example, like product liability cases that lead to personal injury, are that when you're using a blender, obviously you're not supposed to stick your hand in the blender, right? And I'm not an attorney, so I don't know what that term is. If you know that term, please comment below. It'll help my knowledge as well. But it's basically if something is common sense, then you can't argue that they didn't warn me, right? For example, when you're driving a car, you're not supposed to, keep your foot on the gas pedal for all the way for 30 minutes straight in a straight line or something, right? It's these are common sense things. When you use a mug, you're not supposed to spill hot coffee on your head. So there are some common sense conditions in personal injury and product liability cases. So, okay, anyway. So consequences and injuries from video game addiction. Video gaming addiction has been linked to a number of adverse health consequences and injuries. The harms caused by video game addiction include social isolation. Individuals who become addicted to video games end up withdrawing from social contact, which can negatively impact their social skills and development. Anxiety and depression. Excessive gaming is linked to higher rates of mental health issues. Video game addiction has been shown to cause excessive aggression, known as gamer's rage, and uncontrollable anger. School and job issues. Addiction to video games frequently result in academic and job failures. These are pretty big allegations, right? So it's this makes sense why these cases are being shot down, because how do you prove that, right? And it's when you can't just say video games, right? Does that make sense? It's a medium, it's books or movies. So it's kind of you're saying movies cause all these things. So it's no, there's some there's some Serbian movies out there that can really show nasty stuff, but it's watching Mary Poppins or something is not going to make someone go, do something horrible, kick a puppy or something, so it's if you're going to make an allegation like this, it needs to be hyper focused and targeting. So this is called the shotgun method. This is what they're doing here. They're just saying all video games, all these companies. And so it's there's pros and cons to this strategy. The pro is that one person might fold. These are multi-million-dollar companies though, okay? So I don't know. And the cons obviously is that it completely like, you know, it completely, you lose credibility because it means that you don't know what you're targeting, you know? And you're just fighting everybody. So there's 26 defendants here. So I'm just gonna read them all. Epic Games, Roblox, Activision Blizzard. Sorry, I'll just read the full names. So Epic Games, Roblox Corporation, Activision Blizzard Inc., Infinity Ward, Treyarch, Sledgehammer Games, Raven Software, Wardrome Studios, Rockstar North, Rockstar Games, Take-Two Interactive, Sony Interactive, Microsoft Corporation, Nintendo of America, 2K Games, Apple, Another Axiom, Dell Inc. and Dell Technologies, Electronic Arts and Google, Intersloth, Meta Platforms, Mojang, Rec Room, Ubisoft, Visual Concepts, and Entertainment Studios. Okay. Phew. All right, that was a lot. That's a lot of defendants that make a variety of different genres of video games. So I don't know what's gonna happen here. This literally is like, it's the same exact thing that's been happening for decades. Like the violence allegation, and you know, now it's addiction. So I don't know. I don't know where it's going to go. So it says that these lawsuits allege that the game's developers engage in deceptive practices to exploit players, and they are responsible for the very foreseeable consequences. And it states that like so the game's design was created with input from psychologists and neuroscientists to maximize player retention and spending. This is a very real thing, by the way. There were companies that were looking for actual MDs, like medical doctors, to opine on like literally everything. Like I remember one was like a movie, so it's like they need doctors to like basically read the scripts and make sure it's medically accurate. They need every single thing that you see in the mainstream, like they have some sort of like expert, like a doctor or a scientist giving their opinion on it. So this is a very real thing. Like game design is in fact designed in part by neuroscientists, psychologists, and the term for this is gamification, right? So it's like, how do you create a game that people want to continue playing? So then at the end they write, none of this is awful per se, but the game has intentionally addictive qualities, and the developers knew or had reason to know of the potential negative impact on players' mental and physical health. The developers are criticized in these lawsuits, adequately informing players or parents about the game's addictive nature and its potential harms, focusing instead on maximizing profit through continual engagement and spending within the game. So again, like, you know, this is just one article, but we'll see what happens in the next year or so. You know, like the first wave of these lawsuits have all been, you know, thrown away. But again, this is going to be extremely interesting. I'm gonna keep my ear on the ground because this is, you know, I love video games, and I feel like it's like targeting an entire medium. Like it doesn't really make sense. Like I feel like, you know, like if you're going to do a lawsuit, have it be targeted, right? So, and again, like, you know, what's the medical legal aspect to this? Like this is a personal injury case. So this is brand new because, you know, before it was just, you know, like the lawsuits were a little different. Like the lawsuits were like, oh, it influences people to go, you know, do bad stuff to people. But here it's like, you know, they're just saying that it causes addiction, and addiction is a medical term. So you can't just throw medical terms around, right? Like, you know, every single lawsuit, like words are extremely important, especially in the medical legal sector, because if you use the wrong word, your case can get thrown out. So your years and tens of thousands of dollars, like if you use the wrong word, it'll be thrown out, because the medical field is based on literally like thousands upon thousands of patients and, you know, peer reviewed. So yeah, so these words are important. So if you're using a medical word to describe a damage, a personal injury damage, then it better be the right word. You know, like if you're just saying like, yeah, some kids have bad behavior or something, that's fine. Yeah, that's totally fine. Like if you do too many puzzles, like I'm sure you're gonna get, like, you know, like if someone bothers you when you're really deep into a puzzle, you're going to be like, yeah, don't bother me, right? That could be with anything. We'll see how this goes. Leave any comments below. What do you guys think is going to happen with these video game lawsuits? This is just the newest wave. Like, you know, this has been going on for decades. Like, you know, first it was like violence, and then it was, you know, it's always something. But again, like, let me know what you guys think. And it's funny because, you know, it's like there are lawsuits against like actual, you know, things that cause harm, like cancer causing chemicals, which is going to be my next video, by the way. So subscribe, you know, share this channel, and tune in for the next video, because it's going to blow your guys' mind. Like basically it's It's a cancer-causing chemical that we all know is a cancer-causing chemical, and it's everywhere. All right. Well, hope you guys learned something. Leave comments. Yeah, but take care. I'm Dr. Mizan. Pleasure to speak with you all, and until next time. Bye.